is our first example. I want to find the solutions to the cube root of 2x minus 4 minus 2 equals 0. And by the way, I may have asked you guys this already, but does this belong to anyone? Does anyone know whose calculator this might be? It was brought in to me last week and I have not been able to find an owner, so if you know of anyone that's missing one, let me know. Okay, with our radical problems, our strategy is to isolate the radical so we can cancel it out. So if I want to get this cube root by itself, what would I have to do? Add over the 2. You notice it is not under the radical, so we're going to move it to the other side. Alright, then if I have a cube root and I want to cancel that, what's the opposite of a cube root? You could write it as a 1/3 power if you want. You don't necessarily have to, but sometimes that makes it a little more obvious. So what would I have to do to get rid of that? Close. If I said like the square root of x equals 4, how would you find x? You would square, add a square on each side, right? So if I have the cube root equals 2, we will cube each side. Alright, then a cube root and a cube cancel each other. So here, the radical's gone, you just have a 2x minus 4. 2 to the 3rd power is 8, and then it's just a nice easy equation to solve. Add your 4, divide by 2. It is a good idea on these problems to check, because it is possible that we will get answers that don't really work when we solve them. So, quick check, you can use your calculator. You don't necessarily have to show your work, but you are just plugging that back into the original to see. So that would be a 12 minus 4 is 8, so I have the cube root of 8 minus 2, which is 0. It does work. What if you checked it and it didn't work? What would you say? No solution. Alright. I want you guys to do this problem. The cube root of 2t minus 1 equals 1. So this one, our radical is already by itself, so we can jump right in to get rid of it. You cube each side. So you have 2t minus 1 equals 1 to the 3rd power is 1. Add over your 1, divide, and you get t equals 1. And again, make sure you're taking the time to check it. So you get the cube root of 1, which is 1, like it was supposed to be. So this does work out. Alright, let's look at another. So the cube root, or the square root of x minus 1 equals x minus 7. So first step, if we want to get rid of a square root, we need to isolate it, which it is isolated. That's the only thing on that side of the equal sign, so we're good there. The opposite of a square root is a square. Now you have to be really careful. When you do this, what you're doing is squaring each side of the equal sign. So on the left, the square root and the square cancel and you just have x minus 1. But on the right, what do we have?
X squared plus 4
Do we?
Yeah, minus 4 times.
Yeah, if you're squaring that entire side, you have to FOIL that. Because there's more than one term. Because of that, plus, if there's a plus or minus, you're going to have to write it twice and FOIL. So you get x squared minus 7x and minus 7x would be a negative 14x. plus 49. Bless you. It's a quadratic now, so we need to set this thing equal to 0, so I'm going to subtract over my x and add over my 1. Okay, it's a 1x squared, so we can do the shortcut here. What multiplies to a positive 50 and adds to a negative 15? Then if we set each of those equal to 0, we get x equals a positive 10 and a positive 5. Am I done? No. We need to check it and make sure. So again, you are going to plug those into the original problem. Okay, if I check 10, I get the square root of 9 equals 3, and that's good. If I check 5, I get the square root of 4 equals a negative 2. Does that work?
No, because 2.
Yeah, square root of 4 is positive 2, not negative 2. So this one doesn't work. So 10 is my only answer. Questions on that one? Let's do another. Okay. This one looks a lot uglier. We have a lot more square roots in here. But we're going to take the same approach. We're just going to focus on getting rid of one square root at a time. So if I look at this, let's start here. We have this big radical over everything here. So to cancel that, I would square. And when you square, you do each side of the equal sign. Okay, so on the left, when I square, this square would cancel that first square root. So now I have a 2 and a square root of 7x plus 2, because I could only cancel that first one. On the right, what happens? When I look at that one, it will just cancel that big square root. So we have 3x plus 2. Okay, so we got rid of 2 of the radicals in the first step. I still have a radical. So what do we need to do to cancel it? Square again. When you square, you do each side. Okay, think about what a square means. It's saying you have 2 of these things. If you multiply this, 2 times 2 would be a 4. When you took the square root of this times the square root of that, what happens? The square root cancels, and you just have the 7x plus 2 from underneath. On the right, you have 2 of these. So we have to FOIL. So that gives me a 9x squared plus 6x plus 6x via 12x plus 4. Okay, so if we work through this thing, we could distribute this 4. This is a quadratic, so what do we have to set it equal to?
0.
Okay, so I'm going to subtract over my 28x and my 8. Okay, here. Can I do the shortcut box method? No, that only works if it's a 1x squared, so we have to draw out the full box. So those multiply to a negative 36 and add to a negative 16. Negative 18 and positive 2. Good. Alright, so we factor, we can take out a 9x and a 2, x minus 2. Set each of those to 0. I get a negative 2 over 9 and a positive 2. Am I done? No, we do have to always check. Make sure you're plugging into the original problem when you do that. You're welcome to use a calculator to check them. You don't have to show me that work. Yes?
Would it be wrong if you did put it in like the simpler version that you already worked out?
As long
As you worked out right?
if you worked it out right, but you would want to plug it in before you square, because the problem is when you square, like if you had like the last one we checked and it came out like this. Once you square that, it becomes 4 equals 4 and it works. So the issue, the reason we get extra answers is from that squaring, so you want to plug it in before you added any squares. Alright, so if we put in a negative 2/9, let's just use our calculator and plug this in. So I've got the square root of 2 square root of 7 times negative 2/9 plus 2. And I get a decimal, then I'm going to plug in the other side of the equal sign, see if I get the same answer. So you guys tell me, does negative 2/9 work? Everybody should have a calculator out right now. You're essentially just entering each side of the equal sign and seeing if you get the same decimal both times. So Julie said yes, it works. All right. You should get like a 1.15 both sides when you plug it in. So now let's plug in the positive 2 and see if that one works. Is that one good? Yep, you get like 2.828 each time. So this time both answers work. It is possible that you might plug them in and neither one works, in which case we just say no solution. Alright. Let's do another problem. If I gave you, I'm gonna give you guys one to try. The square root of x plus 6 minus x equals 0. Okay. So, first step. If it's a radical, you have to get that radical by itself. So, I'm going to subtract my 6 and add my x. So I have square root of x equals negative 6 plus x, or x minus 6, however you want to write it. Now the radical is by itself. So we square each side. So that gives us x equals, when you square this, that means there are two of these. So you get x squared minus 12x plus 36. Okay, then, if it's a quadratic, we have to set it equal to 0. So if I subtract over my x, then we can do the shortcut box method. So x squared breaks into x, multiply to positive 36 and add to negative 13. Set each of those equal to 0, you get x equals 9 and 4. Okay, check. So if we put these in the original, square root of 9 plus 6 minus 9, so 3 plus 6 minus 9 is 0, so that one works. If you put in a 4, square root of 4 plus 6 minus 4, you get 8 minus 4 is 4, which is not 0, so the 4 does not work, and 9 is our only answer. Any questions there? Okay, I am going to do maybe one or two more examples and then we're done for today. I'll look at this one. Okay, a 1/4 power is the same thing as what? The 4th root. You don't necessarily have to write it this way, but if it helps, you certainly can. So my radical is on the side by itself. If I want to cancel that, what's the opposite of a 4th root? 4th power. So I'm just going to take each side to the 4th. So over here, those cancel. Okay, I would like to set this equal to 0. So I'm going to bring everything over to the right. So I'll subtract my 5x squared Okay. We had some of these types of questions on our test. It's not exactly like a quadratic, but we can still solve it like one. If you have x to the fourth, that would break into what? What multiplies to 6 and adds to -5? So if I set each of those equal to 0, x squared equals 2. How do you get rid of a square? Square root, and when you add a square root, you need?
Plus or minus.
So x equals plus and minus radical 2. We add over the 3, square root, plus and minus radical 3. So we really got 4 answers, honestly. If you want to, when you want to check these, make sure you're using plenty of parentheses. So like if I put in the square root of 2 squared minus 6, we could also do this by hand, but either way, if you plug that one in, you get 10 minus 6, so you get 4 to the 1/4, which you probably don't know off the top of your head, but you could always put that in your calculator and look at the decimal. Equals x. X here was the square root of 2. If you plug a square root of 2 in, you get the same decimal. So if you're unsure when you go to check them, just put it in your calculator and it works out. If we put in a negative, okay, over here, when you square a negative, it becomes positive, so we still get a 4 to the 1/4, but over here we get -2. Does that work? No. So the negative radical 2 doesn't work. Same issue is going to come up when you do the radical 3. Plug in your radical 3, you get 15 minus 6, so 9 to the 1/4 equals the square root of 3. Again, put those in the calculator, it works out. But if you do the negatives, you get 9 to the 1/4 equals negative radical 3. And that doesn't work. So the only answers that checked on this one are the positive 2 answers. Again, the checking, I'm not going to be necessarily requiring you to show me work that you checked it, so you're welcome to use your calculator. But if you fail to take out answers that don't work, then you lose points. Alright, I want to stop here today and give you some time. So, if you did not finish the 5.4 Math Excel from Friday, you need to do so. That's due by 3 o'clock. Today we are doing the 5.5 Math Excel. There are 11 questions. You are not ready to do questions 7, 8, or 9. So we will talk about those tomorrow, but you could really do all the rest of them. So you've got quite a bit of time right now to work on whatever you need to work on and ask questions.